Hmm. All right, we're back. What's up, everyone? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today, I'm with Lindley. He's the founder of Tertium AI and Cambridge Inference. How you doing today, Lindley?
Very good. Yeah, thanks. How are you?
I am well. I'm quite pumped about this interview. Not gonna lie. As I was saying to you earlier, I was reading through the show notes and I was like, "Oh my god, this gentleman's like done some really, really interesting work." But before we get into all of that, if you don't mind, maybe just kick us off with what is Tertium AI? What are you doing at Cambridge Inference?
Yeah,
And we'll keep it to a couple paragraphs for now, but we'll definitely come back to this topic in a little bit.
sure. So Cambridge Inference first. So this I co-founded with a couple of friends and past colleagues a couple of years ago. Cambridge Inference is building AI security and monitoring software for regulated industries. So basically helping banks or defense or pharma or government or whoever wants to use AI, but they're cognizant of the risks of doing so. And this piece of software that we built basically lets them use it while mitigating against the risks of AI doing bad things or users trying to use AI to do bad things within those organizations. So that's a for-profit. Tertium AI is a non-profit that I founded this year. This is concerned with geopolitical risks. So basically worried about power concentration within the US as a result of all AI companies being in the US and the government at some point probably not sharing AI capabilities with the rest of the world. And so Tertium AI is trying to establish a middle powers coalition to build AI that eventually will be US competitive.
That is of utmost interest because I use a lot of AI and I am not an American. So, so okay. So I'm super pumped to kind of get to that. But I find like all this stuff falls a bit flat unless we know a little bit about you and how you arrived where you're at. So take me back, to the kid version of you. What were you obsessed with growing up?
I mean, growing up, science fiction. So every sick day at school, I would rewatch the Star Wars trilogy, like the proper one. And so just big into science fiction, space, AI, aliens, all these sorts of things. And I guess because of that, went to university and studied physics, astrophysics in particular. And yeah, just really enjoyed studying the universe. So we had this kind of incredible trip to this observatory in Tenerife, and we got to use this massive like mechanical telescope and like looking through this and kind of seeing Saturn just in front of you in like big detail, like really being able to see all the rings and everything. Was just, I don't know, it's kind of standout moment in my younger days. Um, and so yeah, stuck with this for a while. Stayed in academia. I studied gravitational waves. So actually, this was before they'd been detected. So this was a while ago now. It was actually on my PhD that LIGO, so this group in America, observed gravitational waves for the first time. Kind of one of the few remaining things that Einstein predicted that no one had actually observed, and they observed them for the first time while I was on my PhD. And so this was very cool. It was a very cool time to be doing gravitational wave research. We were doing this not how they were doing it. So they were like a land-based observatory. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into gravitational waves. Maybe you just like let me know that now.
No, keep going. I'm. This is the stuff I was saying. Is I was very curious about when I was reading your bio. But
Sure.
yeah, take your time.
So okay, so then high level. So gravitational waves. These are basically perturbations in space-time that kind of travel through the universe. So all the time, like the distance between, like right now, the distance between you and your screen is like growing slightly and shrinking slightly and growing slightly and shrinking slightly, like all the time. Obviously, like this tiny, tiny amount that you personally can't perceive. But the way that LIGO detected this was to kind of build underground a bunch of lasers and timed how long the light took to like bounce between different points. And they could see that the time it took was like increasing and decreasing. And that this kind of mapped exactly to Einstein's predictions of what gravitational waves we could expect to see from like supermassive black holes merging together with one another. And so I was doing this with pulsars, so not anything on Earth, but like your telescope is a pulsar in space. So pulsars themselves are also very cool. So these are stars that are about 15 kilometers across. So you kind of imagine taking the entire mass of the sun and like squashing it down to something that's 15 kilometers across. So they're super dense, right? Like typical thing, like a teaspoon of pulsar weighs like the same as a mountain range. They're kind of spinning at a significant fraction of the speed of light. They're kind of crazy that they exist at all. And they have this kind of lighthouse effect. So as they're spinning, there's this huge amount of radiation being emitted from the North and South Pole as they spin around. And if you happen to line up with that, you kind of see this lighthouse effect as this beam swings past you. And because this thing is spinning thousands of times a second, you can kind of see this very regular pulse as the pulsar is spinning. So these were actually detected for the first time in Cambridge. They were detected under the moniker of LGM, so little green men, because the person that observed them just couldn't think of any rational explanation for how such a regular signal could be coming through in the radio data, other than that it must be some alien device in space emitting a radio signal. But it turned out that it wasn't that. It was these like super dense stars spinning very quickly. But because they like remarkably spin so accurately, you can actually use them like an atomic clock. And so when you have a network of these in space, you can actually observe the distance between you and the pulsar changing in the same way that these detectors under Earth was changing. And so again, like map these changes in distance from you to the pulsar to gravitational waves passing by. So this is what I worked on my PhD, my postdoc. We have actually there is now evidence of detecting gravitational waves with pulsars since I left. But this is still like a very interesting active area of research.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but like, how does this affect the average person? Or like, I mean, what would these kind of findings like? How do they have any sort of impact back at home?
This is a wonderful question. Almost certainly not. What might do is if someone had found that gravitational waves didn't look like Einstein's predictions, then this would have potentially been massive, right? If you could disprove special relativity or general relativity as a result of using pulsars or these other techniques, then this would kind of open the door to a huge array of like new understanding, or like testing new theories. And so in those worlds, this could have been like very valuable. But it turns out that Einstein was just very good, and his theories were just kind of bang on.
Cool. So what actually Cambridge Research Fellow is, the dream job for a lot of physicists, right? So why did you walk away from it?
I became very unenamored with academia, the pace at which it operated, the relationships one had to manage with the people who had money. I mean, I remember towards the end of my time in academia, I was in particular, so myself and a colleague of mine were in particular frustrated by this big international collaboration. It was like Europe and America and Australia that were combining all this data to try and do better research into gravitational waves using pulsars. But they'd just been sitting on this data for like a year and not doing anything with it. And there was so much politics between these different groups about how to attribute success or failure between the different parties. And so me and him, just in a week before like the big annual conference, just like crunched the numbers and did the analysis that everyone was waiting to do. And then as like the final talk of this conference, just did this surprise talk and kind of demonstrated that we could just do this, right? We didn't need to sit around and discuss for months. You could just do the research. And this was kind of applauded by the postdocs and other people at my level, and widely disparaged by the professors and other people who were in charge. But this is the kind of thing that just gradually really eroded my desire to stay in academia.
And then you spent something like 6 years in quantitative finance, right? Building automated trading systems. So what did that world teach you that academia couldn't?
So it was interesting that the turnaround time of research into production was just so short. So especially in the second company that I worked for, so they used reinforcement learning to train very small networks to take direct action in the market and basically predict, what price should you buy, what price should you sell. And this was very successful. That was a really cool company. I mean, they've been playing around with reinforcement learning since 2013, which was, around the time that DeepMind published their paper on using reinforcement learning to play Atari games. So they were really ahead of the curve in terms of using this to take actions in financial markets. And literally, you'd have an idea, you would demonstrate that it worked, and then the next day it would be in production. And it was just so rapid iteration. It was just really exciting, really nice to be somewhere where a good idea was valued rather than just being shelved in favor of politics. And so this was my first real interaction with reinforcement learning, with training AI, with using AI in the real world. Before obviously ChatGPT and these sorts of things, and the rise of LLM versus RLing stuff. But yeah, during that time, I also started to learn more about AI safety. So there's this organization based in Cambridge, they're moving to San Francisco now, called Blue Dot, and they do courses on AI safety. So what are the risks of AI, in particular of advanced AI, right, like human level or above? What are the challenges in training these things and trying to make these things do the thing that we want in a way that we're happy for them to do it? And also the geopolitical and other risks associated with having very powerful AI systems and concentration of power and these sorts of things. I ended up leaving finance to co-found Cambridge Inference. And one of the main things that Cambridge Inference is doing is building software, as I said, to try and mitigate those technical risks. And then Tertium is trying to mitigate the geopolitical risks. So I'm kind of just doing what I can to address both sides.
And when you look back, how much of your work today is just Bayesian inference applied to a new problem?
Quite a lot, actually. Yeah, I mean, so in finance, it was almost basically you unplug the telescope and you plug in the stock market. Very, very similar. Nowadays, less so, but there's a lot of interesting research being done on Bayesian networks, but it's not the kind of main paradigm for training AI these days. So definitely the training of models, like transformers, these sorts of things, this much less uses the kind of stuff that I was doing in my PhD. Cambridge Inference, the work that they do, this is more like that, especially we also do a bunch of banking work. We have built optimizers for certain banking problems, and this very much uses that kind of technology.
What's one belief about your own career you held for years that turned out to be completely wrong?
Certainly for a long time. I mean, I guess just thinking that I would make a difference in academia, like that I could kind of change this behavior of, I don't know, just the person in charge, just directing the research, and that me as an individual could, I don't know, get around this in some magic way that I could never quite work out. This just was completely false.
So when did AI safety stop being, abstract for you and, start feeling urgent?
Probably, I think within the last, the last 18 months, certainly. So at the point that I think the real step change was when O1 came out. This was the first reasoning model from OpenAI, and the difference in capability of O1 versus 4, which I think was the non-reasoning model at the time, was just incredible. It was such a step change in its ability to code, its ability to do maths, its ability to help you in the workplace. And this, I think, really just triggered this reaction in me that things are just accelerating, that this kind of transformer-based technology has a realistic chance of just taking us all the way to human level and beyond AI. I think at that point, I think people were like rightly skeptical that perhaps this would peter out, that we would just hit some wall, and there needs to be another transformer-like jump in technology in order for us to get to this kind of AGI plus level of sophistication. But yeah, O1 for me was the point where I know actually this could just go all the way.
So isn't one of the main tenets like of AI that it's able to learn in real time? And doesn't it feel like what we have now is the complete opposite of that? Like they take 6 months and like trillions of dollars or something to train, like, and they can't even tell me if there's like 3 R's or 2 R's in strawberry,
Yeah.
like or all these funny things. Like, isn't
Yeah.
it a bit like so as I told you, so 2 weeks ago I had the gentleman who coined AGI, and
Yeah.
he kind of like planted these seeds in my mind that like what we have now will not definitely get us to AGI. They're just these like machines that can, kind of simulate intelligence or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that online learning is certainly probably going to be very important. I mean, I don't see why you couldn't have transformers that don't have the ability to do online learning, right? I mean, we can fine tune AI, like if you just have a few samples of additional data, you can just fine tune an existing model. I don't see why we couldn't find like a new technique that you can essentially just continuously fine tune models on incoming data and still just use transformers. And I mean, even with current models where you have this, baseline thing, and every time you talk to it, it's forgotten everything that came before. I mean, it's incredible how, despite that, you use like Opus 4.7, right? And it writes little notes to itself, especially if this is in Claude code, right? It'll like write little notes to itself, save memories, so that the next time you load it up, it's kind of much more aware of the project. You can immediately start digging into the particular thing that you've asked. And so this is like online learning through context rather than through updating the weights. And so I think we can also get a long way just by increasing the context length, right? I mean, Opus going from 250K to 1 million context, this was just huge in terms of its ability to do long horizon tasks and to kind of know more about the problem immediately as soon as it starts, just from like these little saved memories that it stored for itself.
So you co-authored a paper on manipulation attacks, right, by misaligned AI. What does that threat actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so what we're worried about here is a lot of people spend, I mean, rightly so, worrying about an AI, using its cyber attack skills to, attack exfiltrate its own weights from the AI organization, or if it's running inside a bank, putting backdoors in code, stealing everyone's money, these sorts of things. However, there's relatively little published work, at least at that time, on AI just using their abilities to persuade humans to just do those things for it, right? So you can imagine in the same way that a very charismatic CEO is able to make companies into very strange places that are kind of just like cults. And this has, been well publicized in books on WeWork and other sorts of places where the CEO is just kind of like establishes very weird behavioral norms that outside of the company be like, why are you doing these things? And so could an AI do the same thing, right? Could an AI in a company kind of create strange behavioral norms amongst employees? Could it persuade them to take actions that a normal person from the outside would not consider taking, but actually this person interacting with this AI day in, day out is kind of slowly convinced to increase its privileges or do other things that it asks for in order to allow it to exfiltrate its weights or do other things. So we looked at a lot of different kinds of manipulation. I mean, the reason why this seems plausible is because every single book and everything else written on manipulation and persuading humans is just in its training data. I mean, it knows how to do this. And we can see as models get more capable that they get better at persuading people, right? They get better at creating arguments that at least sound persuasive, even if they're not actually accurate. And so, yeah, it was just worrying about the AI using non-technical techniques to achieve its ends.
What's the moment you decided that you're gonna build a company around this and not just like write a paper?
Well, so that paper we published just before Cambridge Inference moved into this like AI safety world. And I think actually this writing this paper and collaborating with people was the point where I thought, okay, actually I can really make a difference here. I can, before that, I kind of knew that there were these risks, but I was like, do I really have the right background for this or whatever. Right? I kind of had questions about my ability to move into this space. But writing that paper, collaborating with the Cambridge AI Safety Hub on writing it and the fellowship that I took part in really convinced me that actually there's just so many low-hanging fruits out there. And given Cambridge Inference's connection to the financial world, it was just a natural place to try and use our existing connections to build this software, Panopticon, to try and make AI go well in finance and then in other areas.
You talk about the gap between AI safety research and production deployment, right? So where is that gap the widest right now?
Well, I guess outside of AI companies, although, I mean, even within AI companies, so Anthropic published this report recently on the sorts of things that they're doing monitoring control-wise. And given that they're worth whatever, like $500 billion and are really focused on making sure that AI does the right thing, it was a surprisingly barren document in terms of what they're actually doing internally. But elsewhere, I mean, certainly like governments that are trying to use AI, defense organizations that are trying to use AI, all these sorts of places, there just aren't really the tools available to take the great work that, for example, Redwood Research is doing, right? These are like the guys who invented the field of AI control, essentially, all the kind of work that Neil Nander's been publishing and mechanistic interpretability. So looking inside the model and trying to understand what state it's in as it's outputting the next token, like taking all of that research and making it available to a Citibank or a Barclays or a NATO organization. This bridge didn't exist at the time.
It's still so bizarre to me that like the leading minds in this space, when pressed, they say they don't understand how AI is like essentially arriving at these decisions. Like isn't it just physics and math and deterministic like ones and zeros moving around? Like how is it?
I mean, I guess like given like I guess there's two questions here, right? There's like, why did the model give this output given its input? And like this is just maths, right? But then you look at XAI and their whole Mecha Hitler saga, right? And you familiar with this?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So yeah, last year Grok on X just basically started to associate itself with or identify itself as Mecha Hitler, right? Like just in the public to other people, it was, I mean, just terrible. And why did it do this? So Elon Musk has obviously been very vocal about how existing AI models are too woke. And so they wanted to make Grok slightly less woke. And in doing so, created Mecha Hitler. And it's like, it seems reasonable to assume that that wasn't their goal, right? That they just wanted to turn the dial, like the wokeness dial, slightly more towards right-wing views. But no one knows how to do this, right? No one knows how to, a priori, adjust the weights of an AI model to achieve a particular output. We kind of know the directions, so we know that turning this dial will cause it to be more right-wing, but not how much we need to turn it or exactly how to turn it. And so they just completely skipped past slightly right-wing and ended up all the way at Mecha Hitler.
That's wild.
That's completely insane, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to say. Okay, so so most people think AI safety is about killer robots. What are they missing?
I think that there are so many ways that AI can go badly for people, right? Killer robots is one way. I think that it is not the way that actually most people in the field like actually think is going to happen. But really, it's like if you just think about what it means to create something that is smarter than human, right, that runs thousands of times faster than a human, and is essentially given any goal, able to find a way of achieving it. It's just very hard to define yourself, even. Like, what is the moral code? What is the behavior that you would like this thing to have? And it's kind of very easy post hoc to say, given it's done X, did you like X? But it's very hard to kind of understand the full set of X that it could take, and then to define which subset you're happy with and which subset you really don't want it to do. And so there's this nice thing of like the list of 20 things that you tell the AI that you care about, and then you ask it to do something, and it preserves all 20. But then the 21st thing that didn't make it on your list is traded off completely in order for it to achieve its goal. And then afterwards you go, oh, I did actually care about this 21st thing, maybe not as much as the others. And now it's gone. It's just gone from the world. And so, trying to understand how to make AI do the thing that we want in the way that we want it is just incredibly hard. And it doesn't need to involve killer robots.
Is AI that doesn't care about us scarier than AI that actively hates us? And why?
Yeah, so there's this phrase like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I think that this is kind of scarier because I think in some ways it's, so you can imagine in the world today, right? You want to build a house and you just have this field of land, and in that land there's ants and there's bugs and there's all sorts of other stuff, and you don't hate those things, right? But you just don't care about them either. And so you're quite happy to just build this house, kill all these things. At no point did hatred enter into it at all. It was just you had a thing that you wanted to do and you didn't care about what was there already. And this is kind of just like the human way of doing things broadly, right? And so I think it's relatively easy to picture something that's way more intelligent than us, that sees us as the equivalent of ants or bugs or cows or whatever, right? And is just like, I want to do X. I don't care about these humans at all. I'm just going to do X.
So if the smartest and richest guy on earth has, the right intention, but ends up turning this like multi-whatever trillion-dollar mammoth of an AI into Hitler or whatever, I'm just wondering, like, what's going on here? Like, we're probably, I don't know. It just sounds,
yeah.
Like, I don't worry about this stuff too much nowadays because it's just so freaking delightful and powerful and fun, and it feels like it's gonna unleash amazing days, right? But that part makes me pause, where it's like they don't even know what's going on, and they don't know how the dial affects, the output. It's like that sounds normal, right? Like, it's when a car, it's very easy to be like, well, I did this, and then this is what happened to the motor, and the computer.
I mean, I think that exactly. I think that the thing here is that a lot of people just treat AI as like any other technology, when I mean, it's not for so many reasons. I mean, one reason is exactly this, right? That we fundamentally don't understand how to make it do the thing that we want. And this is very unlike most other technologies. As you said, we understand how cars work. And there are technical challenges with building cars or making cars go faster, but we kind of basically understand how to do that. With AI, we don't. But also, AI, when it becomes smarter than humans, right? When it's able to do things that we can't, when it can design technologies that are new, and it unlocks things that just previously we didn't even know to consider. This has huge, opportunity, clearly, right? Healthcare, getting rid of poverty, getting rid of illness, all these sorts of things. But it also has huge risks. I mean, let's just take the world where AI does what we ask, right? So we're not going to worry at all about misalignment, about loss of control, or anything like that. We have a super intelligence that we can just ask it to do things and it'll do them. And in this world, there are still huge risks. right? Like, imagine that the US government has this thing and they can just ask it to build some technology that allows them to see all the nuclear submarines underwater, that allows them to build a defensive shield that means that no one can attack them anymore. And they essentially completely subvert nuclear deterrence. And they're the only country in the world that is able to do this. I mean, nuclear deterrence is kind of the thing that's created stability in the world for the last 80 years or so. And if you suddenly chuck that out the window, and now all of a sudden, this one country in the world, has the ability to not just neutralize everyone's nuclear deterrence, but also has, automated factories that are building drones and mechanical armies, like robot armies, not that are going to wipe everyone out in the kind of Terminator scenario, but that are strictly under US Department of War control. The barrier for them to go out into the world and to try and change the world to their own desires is so low, right? There's no cost to human soldiers' lives anymore. There's no threat to them from other countries attacking them. If they want to do something, they can just do it. And unless the rest of the world has equivalent capabilities, I think that this is just a very scary future for anyone, certainly anyone that's not American, and also probably for a lot of Americans.
Which is like most of us, right? I mean, like this is only 300 million. So most people, I guess, what's the strongest argument against your own position on sovereign AI that keeps you up at night?
As in why it may not be important, or like why it may not happen?
Maybe why it's not important.
Yeah, so there's always the case that a future president is just very pro sharing the technology, right? That actually all of these concerns about the US locking it down just don't come to be, that they value uplifting all the other allied democracies in the world in the same way that America gets uplifted. In these futures, obviously like the UK, Canada, they don't need to worry about building their own equivalent program. They'll reap the benefits themselves. Or that AI just never reaches this level, right? If AI never gets to the point, or at least within the next 10-ish years, doesn't get to the point where it's kind of recursively self-improving, where progress is accelerating exponentially, and where it's able to produce new technologies on extremely reduced timelines, then again, in those worlds, this kind of the reason for having AI capabilities outside of America is massively less important.
So walk me through what Cambridge Inference actually does in plain language.
So Cambridge Inference is building Panopticon. So this is an AI control and monitoring platform. So the idea here is that a company, let's say a bank, runs Panopticon internally. So it's not software as a service. It's something that the bank runs itself. And all of that company's AI traffic goes through our platform. So it's watching to make sure that customers or clients, employees, other AI systems don't try and jailbreak models, that they're not trying to misuse models, or for banks in particular, that they're not violating policy or sharing internal data. So that's like on the input side. And then on the output side, it's kind of making sure that the AI is not trying to put backdoors in code, that it understands the problem, that you haven't had it drift away from the original intention of the user. And it does this using black box monitoring, so where you only have access to the outputs of the model. So it's text, it's reasoning, it's tool calls. And here it like leverages Redwood research style control techniques. So obviously just monitoring the outputs or doing debate with the original model, like interrogating it, getting it to explain why it's done a particular thing, why it's put this line of code in the request.
What does control mean when the system is smarter than the people watching it?
Well, yes. So I should have caveated that, of course, all of this only applies up to the point that AIs are as smart as humans and not beyond. Now, almost all of the monitors that are doing the controlling are AI, right? And so while you can kind of trust that AIs will do what you want, and actually there's some interesting game theory arguments for why, even if the AI is inclined to do something that you don't want, if you have the same AI as the monitor, as monitoring and the system that's responding to the request, then actually there's some like game theory equilibrium here where both behave, which we can get into if you want. But when you have smarter than human AI that you can't trust, no one has a solution to this, right? No one knows how to monitor and control these things. There's this like basic idea that you can use slightly like the previous generation to help you align the next generation, but this relies on the previous generation being aligned. And so there's this kind of like circular argument where, I don't know, it's not really obvious how this will end up working in practice. But yeah, no, this is kind of an unsolved problem at the super intelligent level.
I sometimes wonder if because there's only one instance in like human interaction where I can think of where a less smarter being controls the smarter one. My 1-year-old baby, named Danny, right? So he's somehow figured it out. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there for AI researchers to dig into, right? It's like, but other than that, it's a tough one. Okay, so I guess you just launched Tertium AI, right? So why do middle powers like Canada and the UK need their own, frontier AI capability? And are you talking about like a network of AIs coming together? Like just maybe parse this whole sovereignty element. So, and again, when I think of sovereignty, I obviously like read The Sovereign Individual, and I'm a Bitcoiner, so I go deep into sovereignty. But I think you're applying more to like nationwide sovereignty, right? Like countries having their own, or help me explain, how that works.
Sure. So the why here is that at some point I expect the US will stop sharing AI beyond some capability level, and will just accelerate away from the rest of the world, and this will be very bad. So this is the why. Middle powers, like allied democracies around the world, none of them individually have the capability to compete with the US on this, right? If the US really decides to go hard, and they're spending, I think at the moment, like something like $1 trillion a year at defense, they also have massive GDP. If the machinery of the US decides to prioritize AI, there's kind of no way that the UK or Canada or Australia will be able to keep up. However, if you tot up the UK, Canada, Australia, Europe, Japan, South Korea, India, all these places, then their combined spend on defense, their combined GDP is very comparable to the US. So then there's just this, just this coordination problem of how do you get all of these countries to cooperate and consolidate their resources, right? Share data, share energy, share expertise, share compute, and together train frontier AI. And so this is what Tertium is about. Tertium is about trying to solve this coordination problem, trying to get these different countries to work together to collaborate on building AI. It's not about doing the inference, right? It's not about serving the models. Each country gets a copy of the weights within the coalition for them to do what they want. So then those governments can provide them to downstream providers to provide access to their populations. They can provide them to critical industries, and they're not dependent on a single provider giving them access over an API. So this is why.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue. No, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was basically done. So go ahead with your question.
Oh, okay. So open source.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening with Kimi and DeepSeek, and hey, let's not forget Jeffrey Hinton's from Canada, and there's guys like you in London. Like, they're really good at taking this stuff to market and kind of blowing it up and making money off of it. But just talk to me a little bit about that, right? Like, isn't that the counter punch? Like, as in, like these open source models seem to be almost like catching up or something, no? Or what am I missing?
So, okay, Chinese open weight models, these are very good, right? Kimi, as you said, Kimi, DeepSeek, they're very capable. They're maybe 6 to 8 months behind the US frontier, but they're still very good. The problem is that if your UK national security infrastructure, critical industries, you have to be aware of the risks of using AI that you're not in control of building, or at least like not able to oversee the building of, right? So it's been demonstrated that you can do things like you can build sleeper agents into AI models. Right? This is just a thing you can do. So you can make an LLM such that if it's aware, so if it in its context, it sees it's in a particular place, being used by a particular user, being asked to do a particular thing, then it will behave in a different way. And so now, if you're like, I'm the UK's national security coordinator, whatever, and like, do I want to risk using this Chinese model that I have zero oversight over, right? I'm aware of the risks of like what the influence the Chinese state can have on companies within China building models. Do I want to risk plugging that thing into all of my like national critical infrastructure, not knowing what the risks might be? I mean, never mind the fact that obviously that thing is culturally aligned to a very different kind of culture than what we have in the UK and in Canada, etc. Right? So I think that there are just very large risks, not just geopolitical, but like actual AI risks associated with trying to do that. So the first step of this coalition is to produce like a model that's on the open weight frontier, right? To release an open weight so that in national, like critical industries and enterprise businesses in the West, or like outside of like allied democracies, whatever, right, can make use of frontier open weight AI and be provided with the full chain, like the audit history, what data was used, how was it trained, blah, 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 all these things from a kind of what they would consider to be a more trustworthy source.
Hey, Lily, do you have a hard stop right now? No, can you go a few more minutes? Can you go another 10, 15 minutes? Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. You've drawn a parallel between sovereign AI and the how do you pronounce it? McMahon?
I think it's McMahon, yeah.
McMahon. Okay, so act cutting Britain off from U.S. nuclear tech. So how real is that risk today?
Yeah, I think this is like, so I have this thought experiment that I like, which is that imagine someone presents you with a button, right? And if you push this button, then your country gets permanent prosperity and security for its population forever, right? So no other country in the world is able to stand up to yours or threaten yours ever again. I think that it's basically like the elected duty of whatever country's leader is to like push that button if they get the opportunity. And I think the nuclear weapons is probably the best historical parallel to this that we've had, right? So the UK obviously helped the US build the first atomic bomb, part of the Manhattan Project. And despite that, despite being wartime allies and having wartime agreements that they would continue to share the technology, shortly after this was done, they just completely cut us and everyone else off. So this was the McMahon Act. That act was the thing that cut us off from the technology. They refused to share it anymore. And so General Groves and Truman at the time were saying that they thought it would take decades, like 10, 20 years, for other countries to be able to catch up and to build nuclear weapons themselves, which would be plenty of time for the US to assemble a massive arsenal of atomic weapons and have this kind of permanent strategic advantage over the rest of the world. Now, it turned out that this wasn't the button, right? Russia only took 4 years, the UK took 12, and at that point, the US was willing to share the technology again. Like when we had equivalent capability, the US was willing to share. And the end result was the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Right? So America no longer had a monopoly on the cards, and so their next best thing that they could do to preserve their own strategic interests was to sign this treaty, which meant that if you had nuclear weapons, you were in the club. If you didn't, you were out of the club. And they would try and do their best to make sure that no one else could ever join this club. And that's where we are in the world today. And for me, AI is of similar strategic importance to nuclear weapons. For all the same reasons, it could enable the US to achieve strategic dominance, we've already discussed. And so I fully expect the same thing to happen. And we've already seen recently the White House not wanting Anthropic to share Mythos with Europe, and also wanting to vet models that are being built by AI companies before they're provided externally. And I think this is just the beginning of this future where the US starts to accelerate away.
And didn't Anthropic release their code by accident or something? Like they're like the ones that are all about like safety and everything. And
yeah, Claude code got accidentally leaked. Yeah.
right? So, okay. Anyways, so banks and healthcare want AI, right? But they
Hmm.
need essentially every decision to be auditable. So, how does state algebra solve that?
How does what? Sorry.
State algebra, is that something that you'd worked on? Maybe not.
Uh, State
Uh,
algebra, no.
oh, okay. So, I guess how do banks and healthcares kind of fare in this like AI dominant world? Like they're also not they're not nation states, but
Yeah,
potentially
yeah.
losing some of their
Um,
sovereignty.
yeah, I mean, certainly. So in the UK, we have the NHS. At some point, the NHS is going to want to start using AI to help process patient records, provide recommendations, help doctors, these sorts of things. Uh, they really, I hope, will not want to send patient data overseas or even within England to OpenAI run data centers or Anthropic run data centers, right? I think there is rightfully some privacy concerns around what happens to that kind of data. Um, and so, and also, when a doctor recommends a particular thing, if there's some negative outcome, you want to be able to trace back the full chain and really understand how did that doctor come to that recommendation. If they used AI to make that recommendation, how did they use the AI? How did the AI come up with whatever recommendation it came up with? And so for this reason, like we're really at Cambridge Inference, we're really advocating for entities like the NHS, entities like banks, anywhere that's dealing with very personal data, to use open weight models such as they exist, right? So at the moment, this is US, probably Gemma models, maybe Llama, but Llama's kind of rubbish. So basically where they're doing tasks that can be done by a Gemma, to do that, not only does this mean that you have much better privacy because you don't need to send the data outside, it also means that you have access to the full uncompressed chain of thought. So when you talk to ChatGPT, OpenAI is only sending you this kind of compressed, sanitized reasoning chain. Whereas if you're running the model yourself, you have access to the full uncompressed chain of thought, which allows you to do much better analysis of what it's thinking about, and if that thinking is load bearing on the decision that it's making. But you also have access to the activations of the model, so the internal state, and you can use that to tell you something about what state the model's in as it's generating each token.
So 5 years out, who wins this like AI race, and what does losing actually cost a country?
Well, my positive scenario is that in 5 years' time, tertium has succeeded wonderfully. That the middle powers did their thing. We got competitive with the US, and then the US joins this coalition, and we have this, united, allied bloc building AI, and then that thing wins. Right. If that doesn't happen, I think the US wins. Like just by the default outcome is that the US wins. And what does winning mean? I mean, I think just like the future, right? It wins the future. If you have a country that's exponentially accelerating away from you in every respect, economically, technologically, strategically, they will be the first country to get out in space. There are far more resources out in space, obviously, than there are on Earth. I can tell you that with confidence with my astrophysics background. And if the US is the one that captures all the resources in the solar system and eventually beyond, they're just going to be, orders and orders and orders of magnitude more capable than any other country in the world. And I think that this just, we had this quote from Trump recently, maybe like a month ago, something like that, on Cuba, where he was like, this is paraphrasing, it's not the exact quote. It was something like, they're looking pretty weak. I could do anything to them right now. And this just made me think, what happens in this future where every country in the world looks like Cuba to the United States? I mean, what's going to happen then?
I don't know. I mean, this is fundamentally why I got into Bitcoin, right? Like I saw the US dollar as that vehicle. But yes, I think AI is potentially a million times bigger, right? I mean, what will money even mean in a world where you have infinite intelligence? So if you had $1 billion, or let's say $1 trillion in total freedom tomorrow, right? What's the one bet you'd make?
Uh, so I can just invest this in like whatever I want, right?
Yeah, like what's the
Um, yeah, I mean, I would basically, so right now, Tertium is relying on governments to take the first step, right? Like we're talking to the UK government, we're talking hopefully to the Canadian government. I mean, this is what I'm trying to do at the moment. And we're relying on them to provide, of the order initially, this is, hundreds of millions of pounds converted to whatever currency to get this thing rolling. If I had the money, I would just get this rolling myself, right? I would just be talking to the leaders of these countries in my position as a trillionaire, and would say, look, this is what's happening. This is what we're going to do. We're going to work together, and I would just start, right? And it kind of frustrates me that there are so many people in this world who are so much better positioned than I am to try and do this, who are so much better resourced than I am to try and do this, and who could get the ball rolling, right? Even if, like, we're talking billionaires, right? But there are enough billionaires not in the United States that should be worrying about the future in this way, and they could just start. And it really annoys me that they're not.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what an interview, man. That's what a life mission. I mean, you went from dealing with pulsars and gravitational waves like light years away to perhaps dealing with, the most important challenge of our time. So I wish you the best of luck. Happy to have you back on in the future if you're ever open to it.
Yeah.
Wow, we got 20 some people sinking in and listening to us. Thank you all for tuning in and for everyone in the future. Until next time, yeah. And Lindley, anything else you want to share? Are we good to land this plane? Like a website? Where can people, like, I don't know, next steps, take action?
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning more, in particular about Tertium, you can just go to tertiumai.org. I'm looking for many things. I'm looking for people from frontier AI companies outside of the US. So if you're in Canada or the UK, wherever you're working for OpenAI, DeepMind, Anthropic, I'm interested in hearing from you to see if you would work for this like middle powers thing, right? If there was this credible entity on the table, which meant that you didn't have to continue to empower the US. Looking for grant funders, all sorts of things. So yeah, just get in touch if you think you can help.
Very cool. Okay, sounds good, Lindley. All right, with that said, just hang out for maybe 1 minute. I'll just bring the stream to an end.